Economics here, just continuing this feedback session on the Unit 3 paper for GCSE Economics. I have my copy of The Economist here, as you can see. So this is from November 21st to November 27th, 2015. We're just about to start question 6, which says, discuss two factors which limit developing countries benefiting from globalization. Can I urge you to read this article beginning on page 55 in this edition of The Economist, entitled Chinese Investment in Africa, Not as Easy as It Looks. This is a great article with regard to the factors which limit the ability of developing nations to benefit from globalization. So let's get back to our paper, our exemplar paper that we've been looking at, and let's just look at what this particular candidate has written. So, trade barriers limit developing countries from benefiting from globalization. Trade as a whole strictly limits them from benefiting because trade provides a means of developing their economies. If they don't develop their economies, they cannot build a sound infrastructure or financial and legal systems which allow them to participate in global trade. They are excluded from international cooperation, which leads to economic growth. Their lack of trade means they don't have the money to invest in human capital to create a skilled workforce to entice multinational companies into locating into their country. The lack of opportunities causes educated people to leave, and then in quotes there at the end I've written, the brain drain. So again, nice answer. And look at the question, ladies and gentlemen, this is a discuss question, and again this is asking you to weigh up the arguments. You know, do these factors severely limit developing countries from benefiting from globalization, or do they not? And then the next question, the next point developed by this candidate is, developing countries are given huge loans to help them build their economy and invest in human capital. These debts come with interest rates which cannot be paid off. Developing countries are often where multinational companies are located. This provides only a temporary source of income, as once the company leaves, they can no longer pay off the debt, which prevents them from thriving, full stop. However, if debt relief programs were introduced, then the moral hazard problem would arise, and the country would have no incentive to solve their problem. Debt is a huge limiting factor in preventing developing countries benefiting from globalization. So this candidate, you can see in the margins, they've got L3s on this one. So this is out of 8, this one. This candidate got 6 out of 8. There's no L4s here because there's no real good evaluative comments in these two. So it's good explanation, but no real good evaluation. So let's see what the paper says, the mark scheme rather says for this one. Things that you could discuss. Poor infrastructure. Poor education and training, poor healthcare, high levels of debt, population problems, institutional weaknesses, low inward investment, a lack of foreign currency. That's an interesting one, sometimes at A level referred to as the foreign exchange constraint. We'll go into that during lessons. Dependency upon primary products, lack of public funds, protectionism in developing countries. So all of these, in developed or developing countries rather, all of these factors can hinder developing countries from benefiting from globalization. So quite a tricky little question, but if you know these and you're able to discuss them well, you shouldn't have a problem. So let's move on then to the final question, which is question 7. And ladies and gentlemen, can I refer you to the first 5 or 6 words here? Using information in the case study. You must, in your answer, you must refer to information from the case study. So particularly with regard to this table, which is figure 12. You must refer to the case. If it asks you to, you must refer to it. The mark scheme says, let me just bring the mark scheme up. Look, to achieve levels, let's zoom in here, to achieve levels 3 and 4, candidates must use some supportive evidence from the data. This is very important that you refer to the data in your answer. You are explicitly told to, so you must do so. So let's look at this candidate's answer. International trade is effective in supporting economic growth. Trade is the basis for economic growth. If you trade with other countries, then a certain level of output is required to create this output. People must be employed, and with their disposable incomes, they will increase the level of aggregate demand in the economy, which leads to an increase in growth, as shown in the diagram. Nice to see an ADAS diagram in here, like so. Trade is also a means. If I was being a bit picky there, ladies and gentlemen, I would say that the diagram is not really referred to enough or explained. So I'm just being picky. Trade is also a means of long-term international cooperation. If countries are involved in international trade, they have a large global market, which increases their market share and cash flows into the economy. Trade also supports economic growth because it provides a sustainable income which can be used to invest in the country. For example, supply-side policies, which increase the economy's productive capacity. I know that this candidate loves talking about supply-side policies. Now we're into the discussion question, because look, remember, it's an evaluate question, a discussion question. So now we're into the two-sided argument. Now we're into the on the other hand. Trade is not always effective. If countries begin to trade without a solid infrastructure, they will soon fail because of the weaknesses of their markets. Trade is only effective where aid has previously been provided to build infrastructure. Aid is also more dignified than trade. However, aid is not always very effective. Aid is good at kickstarting trade, but foreign direct investment has no loyalty. As soon as a cheaper labour comes along, the multinationals move away and the country has no source of income. Aid such as human capital investment also is ineffective if there is a lack of trade. High human capital is useful, however, if there is little or no trade, then there won't be many jobs for the population. Due to the lack of opportunities, the educated population will move away, known as the brain drain, and economic growth will suffer due to a lack of output. Aid such as debt relief is also very problematic because of the moral hazard problem. The country will lack any incentive to correct their problems if debt is always relieved and will not achieve anything on their own. Moral hazard means you've got no incentive to amend your ways and your behaviours as a country if you simply rack up enormous debts and then the international economies of the world just wipe the slate clean. You've no incentive to amend your behaviour. Now we're into the final little section. Overall, both trade and aid are effective in supporting economic growth. Trade alone is very effective because of output and jobs needed. But without aid to build infrastructure, trade would not be possible. As seen in the case study, the countries with the lowest GDP, so now we're referring to the case study, have the greatest growth. Ghana's growth was 7.9%, and its export of goods and services share of GDP was 4.6%. There is a solid link between trade and economic growth. It is a huge component in economic growth for developing countries. It is less effective in developed countries, but produces the highest levels of economic growth in developing nations. Trade is very effective, but it cannot exist without trade. That doesn't make sense, does it? So, this is an L3. This candidate scored on this essay 8 marks out of 12. To get the 12, there needs to be better conclusion, better evaluation on this. That last paragraph, particularly the ending, it doesn't even make sense. But the analysis is good. So that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave it at that for today. You obviously will be doing a similar paper, but it will be a paper for F5. Sorry, it will be a paper for the June 2016 pre-release material, and this is the sort of thing that you've got to be prepared for and learn from the mistakes you've made in this particular session. Okay, I know this has been a very long session. I hope you've been able to stick with it from the beginning to the end. I'll see you next time.